Welcome. In this explainer, we're going to break down the key concepts of business communication, all to get you completely ready for your upcoming exam.
So, how are we going to do that? Well, this session is designed specifically for multiple choice questions. We're going to focus on the core concepts, the key comparisons, and, the common traps you need to avoid. The goal is to help you answer every question with confidence.
All right, let's dive right in. We'll start with the foundational definitions. These are the essential terms that will almost certainly show up in your exam questions, so getting these right is a really important first step.
Okay, so communication. The two phrases you really need to lock in here are two-way process and common understanding. See, communication isn't just about sending a message out there. It's only really successful when the receiver actually understands it. It's all about creating that shared meaning. So why does this matter so much? Well, on your exam, you might get a question asking you to identify a primary function of communication. Just think about these points. When you clarify tasks, it motivates employees. And when you provide good data, managers can make much better decisions. Next up, let's get into the communication process. This is a very, very common topic on exams, so you'll want to pay close attention to the exact sequence of these steps. The order is crucial. This diagram gives us a really nice overview of the whole thing. You can see the path from the sender to the receiver, but also notice that loop coming back. That's the feedback. And see that element called noise? That can disrupt the flow at any point. We're about to break down each of these parts right now.
You must know these steps in order. A classic multiple choice question will ask you what step comes after encoding, or what step comes before feedback. So the order is, a sender has an idea, they create a message, they encode it into words or symbols, send it through a channel, the receiver gets it, decodes it, and then provides feedback. And remember, noise can interfere anywhere in that chain. And here's a big MCQ alert for you. Feedback is not just a reply. Its real job is to confirm that the message was received and understood. That's what completes the two-way process we talked about. Be careful on the exam because a trick question might define feedback as just a simple reply, but its true purpose is confirming understanding. Okay, next, let's compare two types of communication that you will almost definitely see on your exam: formal and informal. Knowing the difference here is absolutely critical. The simplest way to think about this is that formal communication follows the official rules of the company, like a report from management. Informal communication is more like a social conversation, the quick chats you might have with your colleagues. This table shows the trade-offs really clearly. For your exam, just remember this: formal is reliable, but slow. Informal is very fast, but much less reliable. So if a question asks about the best channel for a confidential legal message, the answer has to be formal, right? Because it provides evidence and helps maintain secrecy. Here's another MCQ alert. If you see the term grapevine on your exam, it is referring to informal communication. This is a very common piece of jargon they like to use in test questions, so make sure you remember that one. Okay, another key comparison for your exam is oral versus written communication. The best choice here always depends on the situation. So the main trade-off here is really between speed and permanence. Oral communication, speaking, is fast, and you get immediate feedback. Written communication, on the other hand, gives you a permanent record that can be shared widely and is absolutely essential for things like legal contracts. An exam question will probably give you a scenario and ask for the best communication method. You can just use this slide as your guide. If you need to quickly resolve a misunderstanding, you're going to choose oral. But if you need to announce a new policy to the entire company, you'll want to choose written. Now, let's have a look at how communication flows inside an organization, and also what can stop it. These are two related concepts, and they're often tested together. You should be prepared for questions that describe a situation and then ask you to identify the direction of the communication flow. So downward, that's a boss talking to an employee. Upward is the reverse. Horizontal is between peers, like two project managers working together. And diagonal cuts across different departments and levels, which is a bit less common, but still important to know. Of course, many things can disrupt communication. We call these things barriers, and they fall into several key categories. Put simply, a barrier is just anything that prevents a message from being understood correctly. For your exam, you need to be able to identify an example of each type of barrier. For instance, if someone uses a lot of technical jargon that a client doesn't understand, that's a linguistic barrier. Or if a manager is too angry to really listen to an employee's suggestion, they're facing a psychological barrier. Okay, so we've covered the core concepts. Now, let's put that knowledge to the test with some exam-style practice questions.
Okay, take a moment to read this question. Think back to that 8-step process that we covered. What's the correct term for the receiver's response?
The correct answer is C, feedback. Now, to do really well on your exam, you also need to know why the other options are wrong. Encoding is something the sender does. The channel is just the path the message travels, and noise is any interference. Feedback is the only term that describes the receiver's response. Now, this question is testing two concepts at the same time. The best way to solve a question like this is to break it down. First, identify the direction of the communication, and second, identify the type of channel being used. Let's break this down together. First, is it formal or informal? Well, an official company policy is always formal, so we can eliminate A and C right away. Second, what's the direction? Information flowing from a manager to employees is downward, so that means the only correct answer has to be B. And here is your high-yield summary. These are the most important facts and comparisons you need to memorize for your exam. Honestly, if you know everything on this slide, you're going to be very well prepared. And that brings us to the end of our exam prep session. We've covered the core concepts, the critical comparisons, and the common traps to help you get ready. As a final thought, maybe start to think about how you can identify these communication barriers in your own daily interactions. Good luck with your exam.